started then. All right. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Simplified Cloud Migration, Expert Guidance and Success Strategies. We're excited to have you here today. Just before we get started, I wanted to reiterate a couple of the items in the previous slide. This webinar will be recorded and available to you afterwards. Everyone in this session is on listen-only mode. We will be taking your questions. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to add them to the Q&A panel, and we will be answering them at the end of the webinar. As promised, we are providing some free templates to help you with your cloud migration. And so if you would go ahead and scan this QR code here at the bottom right of this slide, you're going to be able to fill out a form and get some great templates for your cloud journey. So I am Laurie, and I'm going to be your host today. And just like sailors plan a successful path on their sailing journey, today we are going to be helping you navigate the waters for your cloud migration. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panelists. I am Laurie Bacopoules, CEO of Cobblestone Consulting, Inc. We're your global training partner. And nowadays, it's a fast-paced environment in business, and it's important to make sure that your employees are engaged, your customers are happy, and your partners are aligned. And so that's where we come in and help you develop customized training plans and execute them through interactive e-learning, micro videos, and software tutorials to ensure that everybody in your ecosystem understands your offerings. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to announce our panelists here today. Randy Martin, who comes to us with a great range of IT experience, especially in the SAP and SharePoint area. Randy's been working with SharePoint since SharePoint 2010, so great knowledge there, and he's currently manager of IT at Ocean County Utilities Authority and been a customer of Ignatiuz for over 10 years. So welcome, Randy. So excited to have you. And then Glenn also comes with over 20 years of experience in IT and quite the pioneer in SharePoint as well, working with SharePoint since 2003, SharePoint 2003. So great experience there, and recently has implemented very successful migration from SharePoint 2016 to the cloud. So we're going to hear a lot of great stories from Glenn today, and he is the SharePoint lead at CertainTeed today. And so thank you also, Glenn, for participating today, working with Ignatiuz for over the past 3 to 4 years. So appreciate you gentlemen being here today and looking forward to getting your insights. I want to move on to our awesome hosts, Deepti Goil. Deepti comes to us. She's the co-founder of Ignatiuz, and also she runs their PMO and is very passionate about project management and delivery, and make sure that all the technology projects at Ignatiuz are delivered successfully. So welcome, Deepti. And then our other host is Pratibha Dawar, and Pratibha is the cloud architect here at Ignatiuz, and Pratibha comes with vast experience in cloud migration design and deployment, and has run lots of successful projects for Ignatiuz, and will be bringing a lot of insights to help guide us through our webinar today. So that is our great knowledge panelists today. And so let's move on to our agenda. As we mentioned, we will be talking about the cloud migration framework and then move into strategic advantages of cloud migration. How is that going to help you and your company? And then we'll be walking through a technical showcase so you can understand the best practices of how you would actually walk through a migration in your own company. What are the best practices? What are some lessons learned? And then we'll move into a panel discussion where Randy and Glenn, Pratibha, and Deepti and I will be going through several different questions, getting their insight and experience that you can also learn from. Finally, at the end of that, we will go through Q&A and answer some of your questions throughout this series of the webinar. So we look forward to your participation with that. In the meantime, I would like to go ahead and pass the webinar over to Deepti, where she can help us continue our journey in cloud migration. Thank you, Deepti.
Awesome. Thank you, Laurie. Hello, everyone, and thank you to all the attendees for joining our webinar this afternoon. So we just wanted to spend the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes talking about the advantages of cloud migration and going over the process that we follow to help our customers migrate successfully to the cloud. We are going to start with this slide, which is about strategic advantages of cloud migration. So, in today's fast changing business world, moving to the cloud is very important for staying competitive. The migration to the cloud, it brings many benefits like making operations smoother, and it also helps customers save cost. It is definitely a strategic move that can help businesses adapt and grow in this digital age. So let's talk about some of the advantages that businesses experience after moving to the cloud. So the first one that we will talk about is scalability. So when we talk about scalability in cloud, we are talking about the ability to adjust your computing resources based on your user demand. So in the cloud, you can easily scale up, which is like add more resources, or scale down, which is remove any unneeded resources, which without any requirement to invest in a physical hardware. Or if you're an on an on-prem system, you would need physical hardware whenever you have a requirement for adding resources. But in the cloud, your IT infrastructure can instantly grow or shrink based on your business needs. The next one that we will talk about is flexibility and agility. So flexibility is how quickly you can adapt to the changes of your business with your IT resources. So the cloud services, they offer a very high degree of flexibility when it comes to being on the cloud. It allows you to deploy and experiment with new applications um, the without the lengthy process of on-prem infrastructure. And agility is agility is basically the speed at which you can make these changes, right? Flexibility and agility, both they help your business to respond rapidly to any sorry to any like market needs. The next one that we will talk about is innovation and competitive edge. So migrating to the cloud, it kind of gives your organization access to latest technologies like AI and machine learning. So for example, Microsoft has Copilot. There's options to integrate with chat GPT, and none of this require any heavy upfront investment from your side. These type of access can drive innovation. They can help your organization to develop new services, or they can help you improve any of the existing services that you have, and it in return it gives you a competitive edge in the market. The next one that we are going to refer to is cost efficiency. So the cloud model is like is a pay as you go model. It has a pricing structure where you only pay for the resources that you consume. It is more cost effective than the if you had an on-prem system. The capital expenditure associated with purchasing, maintaining, or upgrading the on-prem servers would be much higher compared to what you would be spending if you were on the cloud. Next one, the another advantage that we have experienced is global reach. So all these cloud services, they are hosted in data centers around the world, right? You're not limited to any specific location. You have an option to provide services to customers across the globe. In our case, for example, we want to deploy anything, everything can be deployed remotely because of the cloud. We don't have to be um, physically present anywhere or within any environment uh, to to provide services to our customers. So that's another definite advantage, which kind of basically, your market is expanded, your geographical market is expanded because of being on the cloud. Next one is enhanced security and compliance. So if you're on an on-prem server, as a business, it will be your responsibility to manage the security and compliance requirements of your organization. But when you're on a cloud, your cloud provider, they invest heavily in security measures. They will have the compliance certifications that are needed. They will offer a level of security which could be very challenging or expensive if you were on an on-prem system. They also manage a broad set of compliance standards, and their security services help. It protects your application and data from any type of external threats. Last one that we will be talking about is disaster recovery and business continuity. So these cloud environments, right, they are designed to provide their backup and disaster recovery solutions are pretty robust. So what does that mean? It means that in the event there is a system failure or a disaster, your data and your services can be recovered quickly. They can be restored quickly, which means that your business operations can continue with minimal disruption. The cloud based disaster recovery and business continuity solutions, they eliminate the need for maintaining any uh, expensive data structures or any expensive secondary infrastructure which may be needed on an on-prem system. So these are all the advantages that we have experienced, our customers have experienced while moving to the cloud. Next slide, we are going to talk about some of the phases that we basically, this is the process that we follow when we want to migrate or help a customer migrate to the cloud. We have divided the process into 6 phases, which is assessment, planning, then we go to the preparation phase, then we migrate and follow it with validate, and then in the end we finalize. So let's quickly talk about what is cloud migration. It's cloud migration is pretty much like, you know, you have a ship and you want to sail from one port to another. Instead of picking up all the cargo and just moving it somewhere else, here we are moving our digital cargo, right? So it is your data applications and your other business essentials, and you're just moving everything from one harbor to the cloud, or you sometimes you're moving it from one cloud provider to another. So we have broken down our process into six phases. What we will do is in the next few slides, excuse me, we are going to cover each and every phase. We will break down each phase into some steps that we follow, and then also after every phase we will show you an example or a template that we have used uh, to create more transparency and clarity for that phase of the migration journey. So let's start with assessment. So, what do we do in assessment? Assessment in cloud migration, it involves evaluating your existing infrastructure. We evaluate your infrastructure. We evaluate any applications and what type of data you have, and then we determine its suitability for migrating to the cloud. So this process, it includes assessing factors such as if there's any performance requirements, are there any security needs, are there any compliance considerations, if there's any cost implications. So we'll conduct a thorough assessment. We will review everything that you are working with, and then we develop a migration strategy, and we also identify if there's any potential risk or are there any challenges that we upfront, and probably in the later phase create a plan on how we are going to address those challenges if we foresee them. This phase is also about understanding your current data, basically just making kind of an inventory of what all data you have. So just as an example, recently we were considering migrating for a customer who was a retail customer, and they wanted to migrate their website, and they also wanted to migrate their customer database to the cloud. And the goal was to improve scalability and to reduce some of the operational cost. Now, before proceeding with the migration, what we did is we conducted a comprehensive cloud assessment for their on-prem application. And during the assessment, we analyzed their infrastructure, and we identified all the key applications. We reviewed all the data, we evaluated all the performance metrics, and while assessment, we found out that they had multiple legacy applications which were not optimized to be migrated to the cloud. So that kind of gave them a clear picture of what all they were dealing with. And then in the next phase, we planned that what they wanted to do with those legacy applications. Their options were either to replace them or refactor them or build them from scratch in their new cloud environment. So based on these findings, we kind of developed a phased migration plan, which we will talk about in the next phase. But after everything was identified, at the end of the assessment, we had a clear scope of what we are dealing with. We also had like an assessment report which showed us the list of all the data. We can just review this right now. So this is an example of an assessment report for one of the customers. We can see that these are the total sites they have, these many subsites they have. Uh, it also mentions about the site level. Now, this is just a snapshot, but it also shows that how many sites have been used during that year. It gives you a list of active users. It gives you a list of any users that have not been active. So this assessment kind of gives the customer a clear picture of what they are working with, and it helps them determine um, determine what should be the plan for migrating it to the cloud. So that brings us to the next process, which is the plan process. In so now that we have assessed everything, we know everything that we are dealing with. The next part would be starting to plan on how we are going to migrate everything to the cloud. So the first step we do is we take everything that was assessed, we prepare a list of all of that, and then we sit down with the customer and we determine what is relevant and what need to be kind of scrapped. So we, which is called a filtering process. So we filter that, okay, these are the 10 sites which have not been actively used, so we can get rid of them. These are the users that don't need to be migrated. These are the list and libraries which are outdated now. So kind of make a plan of filtering the content. Once the content is filtered, then we need to determine a mapping. So basically what we do is we have the old uh, location of each and every piece of data or list or library. We map it and we plan that where will that information sit in your new cloud environment. So it could be a URL. It is a possibility that something which was independent earlier may be a part of some other site or some other uh, application in the cloud environment. So we basically determine all of those elements. Once we have mapping done is when we start creating a migration plan. So basically once we have the mapping done, we now know that okay, these are the 100 sites we want to migrate. Gives you a more clear scope, and then you can decide that okay, these are the 10 sites, this is how much time each site will take, and just basically make a plan out of that information which was mapped in the define mapping content section. Now, when we are creating the plan, we also see that there is a possibility that there might be a chance where we might see some changes coming in along the way. So we make sure that we have a plan in place to address those changes as and when they come. So we create a change management plan that, all right, if we are going to get this change, this type of change in the middle of the project, this is how we are going to address it. So that plan is in place. The next part of the planning phase that we take care of is the communication plan. So once the planning is done, all the strategy is done, we set up a communication plan. So we will include list of all the users or the stakeholders that need to be um, informed or updated during the course of the migration journey. We determine what is their influence, what kind of communication is required, what level of transparency they need in the project, and we make sure that is decided upfront during the planning phase, and that communication strategy will be followed during the entire migration process. So just to show you a template that we have. This is an example of our project plan template. So here, based on all the mapping that was done, we made a list of all the tasks, and we also assigned the task to the person who will be responsible for executing that part of the project. And then also there is the start date, the planned dates, and the actual dates, which kind of make sure that there is transparency and we can properly track the health of the project. The next one we are going to talk about is the communication plan. So this is an example where you can see that these are all the stakeholders, what type of communication is going to be sent out, what is the frequency uh, of the communication. For example, the executives, they don't need regular updates, they are just informed monthly. Again, it depends on the size of the project, but they are informed monthly. And they are they going to note, is the update going to be shared using a PowerPoint, or is it a Teams meeting, and so forth. So that's all what is covered in the communication plan, and the communication is um, followed using this plan that was set up in the beginning of the project. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Pratibha, and she will talk about our prepare process.
Thank you, Deepti. So, hello everyone. After completing the assessment and the planning phase, and we have thoroughly studying the current environment and prepare the documentation, we need to start preparing for the migration. So, in the prepare phase, there is 5 different phases include, which covers preparing the cloud environment. So based on the objective of the migration, we will prepare the cloud environment, which what will be the best suitable for our customer. And whatever objective we have for our migration, based on that, we will define the migration tool. And it depends on what type of migration we are performing, and based on that we will select the best suitable tool for that. After selecting the tool, we'll start performing the test migration or the pilot migration. Pilot migration is nothing but the small scale of migration which we use to perform the test run from source to destination, with the help of tool which we decided in this phase. And after completing the pilot migration, and if we get the successful result, we prepared a roadmap for the pilot for the migration, based on the time which we have consumed on the pilot migration. After after preparing the timeline of the entire migration, we communicate the plan to our stakeholders to get an approval from them. Once we get the approval, we'll start the next phase. So let's see what result which we have the outcome of the prepare phase. In the next slide, we will see that the report which we have prepared to share the status of the migration which we have done in this prepare phase. And in the next slide, we will have a scheduled roadmap for that. Like in that, we have defined the timeline of the overall migration, that how much time the pilot migration is done, how much time the actual migration will take to perform for the completion, and after that how much time we require to provide the support for the post migration. So this is the outcome which we have to plan during the prepare phase. Once we are done with the prepare phase, we start performing the next phase, which is migrate phase. And now here the actual picture will come up. And like before starting the migration, first we will divide the content in the batches. So we start a migration. We start our migration from the batch 1, and once our batch 1 is completed, it's sent out for the unit testing. And in the unit testing, we will prepare the test cases or the use cases sorry, based on the requirement. And if there is any issues or any changes are required while performing the unit testing, then we start remigrating the content if it is required. Or if not, then we will just adjust the necessary changes in the new environment. And so this is how this migrate content and unit testing process will work simultaneously. Along with both the processes, we already started preparing the user manual and the documentation for the end users, so that it will help us to identify any issues or any roadblocks which might happen during the UAT, and this user manuals will help users to perform the UAT as well. So this is the entire migration process will work simultaneously. And in the how so now let's see that how we will see that the health of the migration. So here is one template which we have we utilize to just highlight the health of the migration, overall status of the migration. Here we can see that if it is a migration of the server, then here we can see that how many servers we have migrated, how many are in progress, if there is any overdue of any migration process, any roadblocks. So we can show all those kind of status in this dashboard. So this is the result of the so this is how we track the migration. After like along with the simultaneously after doing the migration phase, we already move to the next phase as well. So the migrate phase and the validate phase will work simultaneously. So now let's talk about the validation phase. So like after completing all the migration, and we will share our migration environment or a new environment for our technical cloud expert, who will perform the technical validation in the environment and find out if there is any technical issues or any problems which might happen with the new environment. So we will address those kind of problems in the validation phase. And if required, we will restart the migration process. If not, then just we will move forward. And if everything looks good, and if the migration, if the new environment is approved by our technical person, then we will share it for the UAT. So in UAT, our stakeholders will perform the testing, and if everything looks good, and then it will send out for the next phase. So now if we are talking about the validation phase, so let's discuss what checklist we will use to perform the validation. So the following checklist which we can see here is the general checklist which we utilize to perform the validation in the cloud environment or the new environment. So it's very important, and it's very general checklist which is necessary to perform during the migration. So we will just verify overall functionality in the new environment. If there is any process, day-to-day process which were broken, or is there any navigation, so links are missing, is there any data is missing. So we perform the check for data integrity and usability. User access is also required if we are performing the AD migration or etc. So if we are implementing any custom solutions for our clients, so for that we required a separate checklist or a use cases to perform the entire validation for that customized process. And for that we have to check the performance and compatibility of that application. After that, whatever changes we have made during the validation phase, we again update the user manual and the training documentation to provide a proper step-by-step correct approach to use the new system. Now let's move to the next phase, which is a finalized phase. We cover the validation phase, and everything looks perfectly in the validation phase. Then we move to the next phase. So in the finalized phase, we launch the new environment. But before launching the new environment, we just need to make sure that everything from the source should be present in the new environment. So for that, we will perform one more round of small migration. In that, we will just make sure that if there is any content updated during the execution of previous phases, so in that case, we will migrate all the new data which is updated in the source. In the Delta, we will perform that activity, and after done that small scale of migration, we launch the new environment. And while launching the new environment, we will make sure to lock the source environment, and we will make that environment as a read only, so that no other new data or other information should get updated in the old environment. So after performing these activities, we already plan for the data cleanup. So we start cleaning up the source data. And so this is how this entire process will work. So now let's see that what is the outcome of the migration. So here we can see that the migration which we have done for one of our clients, where they have a very complex architecture, and they have on-premises Windows server in their organization, which is very difficult to manage. And also there is very challenges for updating the system and using the new feature. So we just migrated their entire Windows server to the Azure, and now everything is for them is in the Azure server, and that can be easily accessible and flexible for them. They can also use some new features which belongs to latest industry and trends. So now we conclude our discussion with the final result of the migration process. Now let's hand over the stage to our panelist for the panel discussion with Laurie.
Thank you all so much. What an excellent journey that was. A very detailed journey and path toward cloud migration. So now I think we have a much better understanding of the complexity and the planning and execution that needs to happen to make that successful. So thank you. So as we move forward to our panel discussion, just like sailors getting to their ultimate destination, they like to share stories of their journey and collaborate. And that's what I'd like to do here today. And so we will go ahead and get started with our questions. And our first question is, what are the initial steps businesses should take when planning a cloud migration? And so I'm going to go ahead and get started with that question, and go ahead and ask Randy if he would kick off, his thoughts on that question.
Thanks, Laurie. So for in OCUA's instance, we were kind of forced with the decision to upgrade our Microsoft licenses. And we had all on-premise licenses, and we were thinking about going to the cloud. And it seemed as though Microsoft is forcing its users to actually go to the cloud. So we took advantage of that, and we switched all of our licenses to the cloud. And we decided to go with a project with Ignatiuz, where we did a two-phase project where they did our AD and our Exchange servers and moved those to the cloud. And then phase 2 of that project was to engage them to move our on-premise SharePoint to the cloud. And we have a small SharePoint site. We only have 6 sites in our site and in our overall site. And not like Glenn. Glenn has over 1,000 sites, so we're very small compared to Glenn. And I think that with Ignatius's and Pratibha and the rest of the team, they were able to help us and guide us to what we needed to do to make that migration.
Oh, fantastic, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Glenn. I could speak a little bit more about initial steps. Like Randy said, we had 1,187 sites, so it was very large. Definitely initial step we took was alerting users way in advance that we were going to share SharePoint Online. I think it was a year in advance, then 6 months, and then we kept them alert all the way up, when we were going to SharePoint Online, and that was a big help. So it wasn't like a big surprise to them. Yeah, we went with Ignatius, and Ignatius helped us get we ran PowerShells, and they ran PowerShells to give us details of customizations, data size, workflows, any kind of customizations that are running on the page, in the background, PowerShells running on sites. And then we were able to put all that together and put it into like one report where we had whether the site we had it by 2 ways, whether it was customizations or data size. And then it would be like small, medium, large on what kind of effort it would be. So if there was a lot of data, it would take a long time. It would be a large effort for data. And then code-wise, maybe there wasn't any customization, so that would be low. And then we basically, at that point, the biggest challenge was getting site owners, because we had 1,187 sites, and a lot of the people were gone. Our sites go way back. So a big thing was finding the site owners, and we were able to use a report from Ignatius that had site owners. So we went in there and we tried to update it and get all the current site owners, or find people to own the sites, and that really helped.
That's fantastic. So as far as the planning goes, you really did that assessment piece to understand, where you guys were and what plan you wanted to put in place to move forward. And so that brings me to my next question around readiness. How did you prepare your organization to, to really adopt this change and this decision that you're about to make?
I could take that one back. We definitely, when we sent out those initial emails, we put in, and we worked with Ignatius on that, all the advantages of going with SharePoint Online. So get them excited about it. We worked with our security department because, of course, they were also concerned, because we're moving from a secure environment internal to the cloud. So we dealt with our security department. We found out information. We had Ignatius go over it and made sure our security department was fine with it. And also, there was restrictions on where the data would be kept. And, and we also leaned on Ignatius to find out, to make sure the data was kept within the Americas. And so security was clear with that. And then, we just made sure the owners, over time, we would send them, even though we say SharePoint Online is coming up, we'd always put in new features just to, get them excited about it.
Okay.
And if I could just follow up on that a little bit, for OCUA, it gave us an opportunity when Ignatius did the migration process and really did a thorough assessment of our current sites, and we were able to then decide on which web parts we didn't need going forward, what pages we had created that we didn't need going forward. So I mean, they did a phenomenal job in documenting that for us, and providing that to us. So then, like I said, it allowed us to go back in and delete some of that stuff. So we didn't have any of that, what I'll call garbage, going onto our new site. And it also allowed us to refresh our site. They provided us a bunch of different templates for how we wanted the site to look, because we had been using that same template for quite a few years. So again, it allowed us to refresh our site. So it was all good. It was good stuff.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so what are some of we were talking, you just touched on data security. How much did security play into the overall planning? I mean, Glenn, I know you worked with the security team. Did you, how about you, Randy? Did you work with your security team?
Well, we're a lot smaller than Glenn, so for us, basically, security team is myself and one of your associates. So, but what we did need to do is make sure that when we went to Microsoft's cloud, that we went to the government cloud, because we're a government agency. So we had to go to the government cloud, and we had to make sure that was hosted in the United States, because we couldn't be outside the United States. So that was big, and Ignatiuz helped us with that process, just to make sure that we were on a government cloud, and that we were in the United States.
Oh, that's a great tip. That's excellent. And then I hear that, from an adoption perspective, there was a lot of communication, there was a lot of new benefits for your end users that really helped with the migration itself. Were there some things, disruptors that you may have experienced that you had to overcome? Any disruptions, like, as far as any lessons learned? Let's just say that. Any lessons learned during your migration progress? I think.
Yeah, I can take that, or I can start it anyway, Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we had our on-premise site that we used throughout the entire project. But when it came time to switch over and do that final migration to the cloud, we did that over a weekend. So there was very little impact to our end users over the weekend. We do have some crews that do work on the weekend, but it was limited. They were very understanding of the fact that they wouldn't be able to access SharePoint over the weekend. And I guess the one pain point that we had is that there was some workflows, and some of those workflows, when they were migrating them over, we forgot to turn off the actual email notification. So some of our users were getting some old email notifications. Not the end of the world. I mean, if that's the worst thing that could happen during a migration, then we did pretty well with that. But overall, it was very painless. We came up with that plan ahead of time to do it on we did it on a holiday weekend. So we knew we were off on Monday. So we did it on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. By Tuesday, we were live, and very little impact on the end users. And that was one of the other things too. During the project design phase, we also wanted to keep the sites very similar to what they were today. So the navigation part of it was not going to be new to our end users, because we all know that end users don't like change. So when you change things, they kind of get upset with you. But we tried to keep things the same to limit that. And it was very successful. We all worked very well with that.
Yeah. And to add to Randy's point about those emails, Randy and Dawn and everyone was very patient during that time. So again, thank you, Randy, for being patient with us at that time. And I'm glad that it was managed somehow. So
Well, that's a great story, and it's good to know that there are lessons learned in projects, and it's important to address them, plan for them ahead of time, and then execute and make sure they're very minimal risk as you're implementing them. So
absolutely, yeah.
So
now we know what not to do next
that's
time.
right.
So
That's right.
yeah.
And Glenn, how about you? Because it's always good, to understand lessons learned in these types of large migrations?
Yeah, we didn't really have much issue with users switching over because we would Ignatius would do the migration. We kept the old site open, and then when the new site was ready, we would check it, make sure everything was, done, and then we'd have the site owner also check it. And then when they were fine with it, we would pick a day, and then we would like the next day or whatever, if they were fine with it, and we'd make the old site read only and put a link on that to the new site. And so it was real painless, so we didn't have any problems with that. And we'd run something to make sure somebody didn't add any documents in that narrow gap between when we switched over. And probably a big lesson learned we had was we had super tight security on the SharePoint Online. So on the previous one, we could code right on the page, put HTML or JSON or JavaScript. With the SharePoint Online, we had to use SPFX, and we were very new to that. So Ignatius had to help us with that, so it was a whole different ball game there on doing some of these customizations. So we really appreciated the help on that.
Fantastic. And then as far as, some of the key, post-migration strategies, what type of post-migration strategies did you implement to continue and to improve your sites and expand on them?
For us, it was navigation. We determined that there was some pages that lacked navigation, so we decided that we were gonna, improve the navigation from page to page, and added some more, boxes with links to different pages or different web parts, different document libraries, and that seemed to go over really well because it was a lot easier to make those changes in the cloud than on premise. So we made a lot of changes as far as the navigation went to really improve the site. And with that new template that we decided on, it really was a fresh new look and a fresh new start for us.
Fantastic. Glenn?
Yeah, and with us, like I said, we had 1,187 sites. But the problem was a lot of that data was just old. So we had site owners and all go through it, and we were able to cut it down to almost 400 sites. And so it was relevant information.
Wow.
So no longer was it outdated information. It was information that they could actually use. And like Randy said, we also made the main portal page real nice, no more standard SharePoint look, but a modern like web look. A lot of the benefits of post migration is let's see, the time period of getting issues resolved and questions when we moved over post migration, we really relied on Ignatius with that because we were so new, especially with the complicated customizations. And I definitely appreciate what Ignatius did they set up a site for us with demos because we weren't that new to SharePoint. I mean, we were new to SharePoint Online, and but Ignatius was very familiar with SharePoint Online. So they created demos for us that we could show users, here's how your site could look, so real fancy things, and also Power BI graphs and all that we could now put into it. And they also, we set up meetings with, site owners, and they would have users in their group. And we go over these new features and all that we set up for them. And a lot of people wanted training documents to go over it. And so we worked with the Ignatius, set up end user training PowerPoints, and we would send it to them, and they really appreciated it,
Fantastic.
Let them do a lot of the work on, they could do a lot of the stuff themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's some powerful, those are some powerful solutions and testimonials. So Thank you so much, Glenn. And I know we're about 5 minutes out, and I think we've talked about some, some of the best practices, some experiences, both from Glenn and Randy. And I'd like to give just a couple minutes I see we have some questions out there. I'd love to give a couple minutes to bring some questions out to you guys. Deepti, you want me to
Sure.
just keep going here?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So we have Tara Hill who's asking, what advice would you give to organizations currently considering a similar migration journey?
I could take that if you want.
Go ahead, Glenn.
The most important thing was the pre-migration. It was, especially if you have thousands of sites. The most problem we had was trying to find site owners for over 1,000 sites. So you have to start that way in advance, because you don't want to wait till you're close to the migration and you have nobody to ask if you have any questions. So that was definitely a major thing. And then Ignatiuz ran all those reports. We were able to line up week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and put like these were low, that were not very complicated to do. This was medium, this was large. Maybe we do two of the easy ones, one medium, and then the next week we take a large one, and then choose, So it was nice setting that up in advance. So when we started, it wasn't a big shock. It really took us, we did a proof of concept, a couple sites, 3 sites, a low, medium, large, and we worked out the kinks. And then we had any issues, we already had a list, who owns this site, who we can talk to, and all. So preparation, I think, is a big key.
Yeah, I agree with what Glenn has to say there.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Deepti, what do you think? We have a few more questions. I'd like to just continue down the road real quick, maybe 5 more minutes or.
Yeah. If it's okay with everyone, I see that the attendees are still here. So hopefully everyone is okay and we can go through like maybe a couple more questions.
We'll go through a couple more questions, and if folks have to drop off, knowing that it's a couple minutes until top of the hour, we want to just really say thank you so much for joining us in this journey today. And, please let us know if you have, any additional questions, contact Ignatiuz and we'll get you taken care of. So just a few more questions, because I think this would be very advantageous for folks. Sean asks, how did you train users after the migration?
I can take that one. So basically it was a train the trainer thing. So Ignatiuz trained myself and my assistant, and then we were able to train our end users. And that's been a model that we've used on other projects and other applications, and it's always been very successful for us.
Yeah, and that was the same with us. And then we would hold a meeting with the site owner and whoever they wanted in the meeting to go over any questions. And then we sent them a few documents, I think a PowerPoint and a Word document on working with SharePoint Online.
Fantastic. Thank you. Another one, Wesley, are there any steps or guidelines in the template for post-migration handling support requests?
I can take that one. What we did with post-migration support requests, we have a typical help desk that they can go in, and we made sure that they added, SharePoint Online questions. But also on our portal, we put a new image for any questions, support requests, or any kind of new sites, things like that for SharePoint, and they could enter all the information and submit it to that, and we would get the email.
And that was the same for us.
Leveraging SharePoint itself to capture requests and manage users. Fantastic. Corey asks, can you share some insights into the biggest benefits you've experienced since completing the migration? What are some of your biggest benefits?
I'll take that one, or I'll start that one at least. So for us, it was, having SharePoint in the cloud allowed us to, access it anywhere now. So for our field workers, they're now able to access SharePoint anywhere they're at with a, internet connection. And we have a lot of SOPs, standard operating procedures that they can now access if they're having an issue at one of our pumping stations. And it's right there at their fingertips now. We have some other sites too for executive staff that they can now access a lot of their documents and data, from home or from wherever else without having the VPN into the, to our network. But I think that was one of the biggest one. And then the elimination of the servers on site was another. And then just the man hours that were spent, administering those servers as well. So I think those were the biggest benefits for us.
Yeah, I agree with Randy. The administration was a pain in the old setup. Having to get rid of that and just concentrate now on development and other things is fantastic. The biggest benefit, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to going to SharePoint Online. I like that we can use all modern tools now with the SharePoint Online. I mean, we're throwing in Power BI, which looks really sharp. We're close to putting in AI on our SharePoint. We want this to be the place to go. So now that we're on SharePoint Online, we can use all those other tools to make SharePoint the place where everybody goes and not other locations.
Fantastic. So that folks are more informed, they have information at their fingertips, one central source of data, right?
Yeah, and Ignatiuz built us those demos, so they're able to look at those and get ideas, say, well, I like that, or I like this, and we can build it for them.
And once you start using it, there's always more ideas on how to enhance it because there's so many options.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And we have one last question. Thank you all for being so patient. Angela asks, are there any automated alerts or notifications built into the database for identifying potential issues? So maybe an issue log that comes in the back end. I think that's what she's asking.
Yeah, I'm not sure what dashboard she's talking about. Is that the Ignatiuz dashboard that they build?
I think that's probably more on when you do the administration for like you can check in to the admin of SharePoint Online. For us, we don't do it, so we're not able to get into that. But I'm sure whoever is the SharePoint who has SharePoint admin rights, I'm sure is able to go in there and check for if there's any potential issues or whatever. But
yeah, we do that for an audit standpoint. We go into the admin to check to make sure that there's no unusual activity that's occurred on the site. But we've made that a part of our weekly, routine to just go into the admin site and just check for any sort of unusual activity.
Yeah, I remember, Randy, that there was a situation where I believe one of the users was able to create a site when they were not supposed to.
Yes.
So, yeah, those things could have definitely been avoided. Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate, those are the questions that we have thus far. We really appreciate your collaboration in asking these questions, great responses. And as we close out this webinar, I would like to just send out a heartfelt thank you to our panelists for being here today and delivering so much wisdom on, really understanding the technical roadmap that's involved in this type of migration, as well as real life experiences and insights to help us understand what is a real experience with this type of deployment. So Great collaboration. Thank you again. I hope you all enjoyed this journey, and please reach out if you have any questions about cloud migration. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for spending an hour with us today.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.